Plattsburgh.
Good evening from the Strand Theater in downtown Plattsburgh. I'm Brian Colleran.
And I'm Stefanik. We want to thank you for joining us and thank the Strand Theater for having us. We would also like to welcome the leading candidates in the race for New York's 21st congressional seat. Republican incumbent Elise Stefanik and Democratic challenger Tedra Cobb.
They will have the next hour to explain why they should be the one representing you in Washington, D.C. The candidate who wins in November will speak for most of northern New York, 10 counties and parts of 2 others.
Here are the rules for tonight. Each candidate gets 1 minute for an opening and a closing statement and 1 minute to answer each question.
Now, if the other candidate is mentioned, they'll get 30 seconds for a rebuttal, and we ask that you may have to clarify yourself as we go along. And with that being said, let's begin.
And Ms. Cobb, we start with you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, NBC5. Thank you, Brian and Stephanie and Congresswoman Stefanik for joining me tonight. I am Tedra Cobb, and it's my honor to be here with you tonight. New York 21 has been my home for over 30 years. I graduated from SUNY Potsdam, married my husband Scott, and together we raised our 2 children in Canton. I've dedicated my life to public service in this community as a volunteer firefighter, a healthcare advocate, a mom, and an educator. I'm running for Congress because your family deserves a representative in Washington who will fight for you. My story isn't unique in the North Country, but it would be unique in Washington. And I hope to represent you there.
Ms. Stefanik.
Thank you so much to Brian and Stephanie. Thank you to NBC5, and thank you to my opponent, Tedra Cobb. I'm Elise Stefanik, and I am honored to serve as your Congresswoman. When I ran for office in 2014, I ran to bring new ideas and a new generation of leadership. And I'm proud that after 3 terms, I've delivered real results for the hardworking families of New York's 21st Congressional District. I've been a tireless advocate for North Country veterans, delivering over $4 million of VA benefits and expanding access to benefits for our Vietnam-era veterans. I've fought for seniors in this district, delivering over $2.8 million in Social Security benefits, over $1 million in Medicare, and leading the effort to reauthorize and pass the Older Americans Act, which funds Meals on Wheels. 2020 has been an unprecedented year, and I want to thank all of our frontline workers, our healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, our small businesses, our teachers who have worked so hard to overcome and beat COVID. I'm honored to represent you, and I look forward to the next hour of debate.
Let's start with the pandemic. We all know the numbers right now. We can also see that cases are spiking again nationally, and tonight people remain out of jobs. What does Congress and the president need to do right now to address the pain and suffering? Ms. Stefanik, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, today, Speaker Pelosi and Democrats in the Senate have walked away again from a package that was put forth by Senate Republicans that funds the Paycheck Protection programs. What I'm advocating for is direct relief to our K-12 schools to ensure that they can safely remain open. I'm advocating for direct aid to state and local governments, particularly our county governments and local towns and villages that need that direct relief. I'm also advocating for additional funds for testing capacity and our hospitals. What I've been really proud of is the 3 previous COVID packages. We've delivered significant bipartisan results to this region. $250 million for local small businesses so they can keep people employed. Over $165 million to hospitals and health centers that I've delivered, and over $26 million to our colleges and universities. I will continue to fight for bipartisan solutions. My opponent is a rubber stamp for Nancy Pelosi, who has walked away multiple times from negotiations.
Ms. Cobb, it's been months since money has gone directly to American people. What needs to happen in Washington, D.C. right now?
Yes, absolutely. So Elise Stefanik blames Nancy Pelosi, but let's be real about it. This president has walked away. Mitch McConnell has said that he will put it on hold because he's going to focus on the Supreme Court. We need every single thing that Elise Stefanik has said, but unfortunately, she's not delivered the second package. If I were in Washington, I would get my fuzzy blanket and my pillow, and I would put myself in front of Mitch McConnell's door and knock on that door several times a day. until he gets to work and until he works with the Democrats to get a package for Northern New York families. We are desperate. We're facing a winter, and people are in need of the next round of assistance.
Is that next round going to come before the first of the year?
Absolutely. We are going to deliver that next package. My opponent is a parrot for Nancy Pelosi. She would vote for Nancy Pelosi. It's quite clear on this stage today. She also said we didn't deliver a second package. This would be the fifth package. We have already delivered over $1 billion in direct funding for testing as well as vaccination development, $1 billion of support for small businesses that small businesses in this region have benefited from, and $165 million for local hospitals. And I'll give you an example. When local hospitals reached out to me needing funds, I went to work. I worked with each and every individual rural hospital in this district to deliver the relief they needed.
You want 15 seconds? Go ahead.
Yes, we're waiting. The reality, Elise, is that you are in Congress right now. There is not another package right now, and this is exactly what's wrong with Washington. The language that you use, the name calling that you use, the divisiveness is what is wrong and why we don't have another package. It's a problem.
We've got a lot of questions to get to in the hour. Next question.
Next question. A question for Ms. Stefanik now. You've held several in-person campaign events with both masks and social distancing protocols in place. How do you support the president holding campaign rallies right now with little to no social distancing in place?
Well, first of all, I think the president is campaigning directly in front of the American people. That's in stark contrast to Joe Biden, who's frankly stayed locked up in his house. Even Barack Obama is out there campaigning in person today, but Joe Biden continues to stay away from answering tough questions and communicating directly with the American people. This is a stark contrast in our race. I think it's important as an elected official, but also as a candidate, to directly hear from voters, particularly as we are safely reopening the North Country. My opponent has done in-person events. Earlier this year, she's chosen to mostly campaign behind her computer screen. And in the coming days, I believe we'll both be doing in-person events. But it's important to hear directly from the voters. That's what they expect of their elected officials, and that's what I've been proud to do in this campaign.
So you support the way that the president is?
I support the president's campaign. I'm honored to be co-chair of his re-election committee in New York State. I'm honored to earn his endorsement. And I think it's important that you need to be out there working in front of the American people. Joe Biden has struggled to campaign, and anytime he's been in person, he's frankly struggled to answer any type of questions from the press. So I support the president's campaign, and I am going to out-campaign and outwork my opponent.
Ms. Cobb, you haven't held many in-person events. What is your stand on the president holding these large rallies?
So let's really talk about what's going on here. The president lied to the American people in February about how dangerous this virus was and is. And Elise Stefanik went to Tulsa. An example, went to Tulsa where they did not wear masks, knowing how dangerous this virus was. My priority is always to put people first. My background is in public health, and we have put people first from the beginning. We've made almost 3.5 million phone calls to voters. We have written letters, we have done postcards, we have reached out, and we have obviously done Zoom. But the reality here is this. My priority is to reach out to voters while also keeping people safe. This president has purposefully put other people's lives at risk because he insists upon not following public health protocols. He recently called Dr. Fauci an idiot. This is confusing to the American people. Over 200,000 people are dead. 9 million people have been infected. 30 million people are unemployed. This squarely fits on this president's shoulders.
Well, I want to follow up on that. While Tedra Cobb mimics Nancy Pelosi's talking points because she is a vote for Nancy Pelosi, I want to talk to the voters in the North Country about how proud I am of our region, of our county public health officials, of our hospitals and healthcare workers who I've worked very closely with. We've maintained the lowest positive COVID rates in the state and frankly in the country, and that's a testament to your hard work every single day, and that's also at the same time as ensuring that we can safely reopen, which is critical to our economy, it's critical to our jobs and our students.
The reality is this: public health professionals model the good behavior, and they wear masks, and they have to keep other people safe. And the confusing thing for this president is that he's not being honest with the American people. He's not following that protocol. And the result of that is the deaths that we have seen in this country. That sits squarely on his shoulders. And public health professionals in our communities have to follow and to communicate with local people about how to follow, how to keep our communities safe. When the person at the top, the leader of this country, cannot, has not, will not, because he puts himself first.
Okay,
that's not leadership.
We've got a lot to get to here tonight. Let's talk about law enforcement. There have been calls to defund the police, reassigning some of that money for better mental health services. Ms. Cobb, your opponent has criticized you for supporting a cut in law enforcement during your time as a St. Lawrence County legislator. Would you address here tonight, please, tell us about that situation and tell voters why you voted to eliminate that sheriff's deputy position when you were a legislator in St. Lawrence County?
I am so glad you asked me that position. So some of you will remember in 2008, we had what was the Great Recession. And what happened was we had to decide, how do we keep public health, mental health, Office for the Aging, our road patrol, our roads and bridges funded. And this is actually the crisis that we are now talking about if we don't get federal aid to local and municipalities. These local municipalities will be in the same position. And so what we unfortunately had to do was sometimes not fill positions. We did not in St. Lawrence County ever lay anyone off. What we sometimes had to do was not fill a position. So to answer the other part of the question, I do not support defunding the police. However, I do feel that we need to fund those ancillary professionals who go with the police, mental health providers, substance abuse providers, so that when police are going to a home, they have support people with them to help our families who are suffering and to keep our police officers safe.
You've used this example throughout the campaign. Is it fair to use a position that was not filled as a call for defunding the police?
Absolutely, because it eliminated a deputy sheriff's position. And there is a reason why I have been overwhelmingly endorsed by law enforcement agencies and organizations, and my opponent has 0 endorsements from any law enforcement groups. This is a district where we respect our law enforcement. They maintain safe, secure, and healthy communities, and they have very strong proactive outreach to underserved communities right here in the North Country. I'm proud to be endorsed by the New York State Troopers Association, county sheriffs across the district, the New York State Investigators Association. No amount of explaining from my opponent is going to take away from the fact that she voted to eliminate, not fill that deputy sheriff's position, but she also was part of the Democratic leadership in St. Lawrence County that was advocating for the elimination of the highway patrol. This is in geographically the largest county in New York State. Having support for our law enforcement is important. Not only that, but at the federal level, she supports Nancy Pelosi's anti-police bill that would redirect funding, i.e. cut funding from our law enforcement agencies. I'm proud to have the support of law enforcement, and I'm proud to back the blue.
I'll give you 30 seconds to respond to that.
It's unfortunate. Every time Elise will lie and she will twist the truth, and the reality is, Elise, you do not understand local government. You have never served in local government, you've never served as a volunteer anywhere in this community, and you twist and turn the truth. And it's unfortunate because you are the Congresswoman here. You owe it to every constituent out there. You owe it to everybody in this district to at least tell the truth. But you won't do it. And you continue to name call and to bring this sort of vitriol. It's not who we are. It's not who I am. It may be who you are.
Tedra, you run from your record, whether it's your cut for the deputy sheriff's position, whether it's your shifting on Medicare for All, which you ran in support of for 2 years, whether it's your gun ban that you were caught on camera lying to voters about your position because you knew you wouldn't win. And when it comes to local government, what is most telling is after your tenure on the St. Lawrence County Legislature, it overwhelmingly voted Republican because it was mismanaged fiscally. You voted multiple times to raise taxes, and it's why at the local level, I've been endorsed by 800 local elected officials, including over 50 Democrats. You don't have nearly that amount of endorsements from local elected officials. You can say that this is lies, but it's the truth. Your voting record is the truth, and you can't stand on your voting record.
Okay,
well, I hope you'll ask for
we are
more
going
questions.
to
We've got
move
more
on
topics.
to another question,
Thank
and
you.
you actually put us right into this question, because we are going to talk about your campaign television ads. At a time when our country is so divided, these ads attack each of your records and your characters. Ms. Stefanik, you say you're a bipartisan member of Congress who works across the aisle, but this campaign cycle, you have borrowed a page from President Donald Trump, who labels his opponents Sleepy Joe, Crazy Bernie, Crooked Hillary. Now you're tagging Ms. Cobb with nicknames like Taxin' Tedra and Gun Grabbin' Tedra. Did you get your inspiration from the president? Has his behavior and name calling given you the license to do so?
I've gotten my inspiration from voters in St. Lawrence County. It was a suggestion by a voter in St. Lawrence County who recalled the multiple tax increases that Tedra voted for. She voted to increase property taxes, she voted to increase mortgage taxes, she voted to increase sales taxes. She has earned that nickname and it fits like a glove. I've never voted to raise taxes. But what's really important, when I talk about bipartisanship, I'm proud to be in the top 5% most bipartisan members of Congress. That's by report cards, by outside organizations, and I've worked to deliver bipartisan results to this district to help families, small businesses, farms, and manufacturers. My opponent has voted to raise taxes. She also is on the record, caught on camera, saying she supports a gun ban, but what's worse, she said she's willing to lie to voters because she knew she wouldn't win.
I know what you're saying, that you got the idea from someone in St. Lawrence County. I think what we want to know here tonight is...
We're talking tone of the campaign.
This is a clear policy difference. Voters deserve to know the clear policy difference.
Policy.
You can see my opponent smearing me. This is a policy difference. Tedra Cobb once again is running from her record. She voted numerous times to raise taxes, and it's one of the reasons why Republicans ended up winning St. Lawrence County. She supports Joe Biden's tax hikes, and she voted at every opportunity to raise taxes. I've kept my promise to you, North Country voters, and I've never voted to raise taxes.
Okay, Ms. Cobb, you have a television ad that you endorsed with veterans who support you, and one of them calls Ms. Stefanik's actions un-American.
Yeah.
Do you believe Ms. Stefanik is un-American?
What I believe is that there are 117 days ago, we learned that Russia put bounties on the lives of American soldiers. And Elise Stefanik has done nothing. That is un-American. Representative Stefanik represents Fort Drum. She sits on the House Intelligence Committee meetings, on the House Intelligence Committee. She sits on the Armed Services Committee. She's in a special position to make sure that Fort Drum soldiers are safe and are not in harm's way, and their families deserve a representative who will have their back. So that ad is accurate about her inability to stand up for the lives of American soldiers. It's tough. I know it's tough. But they are in harm's way. And I think it's really important that we are able to talk about that and that the people in this district know that.
You want to respond to that?
Absolutely. The facts are clear here. Look at our intelligence agencies and our military leaders. Tedra Cobb is smearing our men and women in uniform with those ads because head of U.S. forces in Afghanistan, who works closely with General Menace, who's the commanding general at Fort Drum, says there's no substantiated intelligence for Russian bounties. But what's really important is my #1 priority is force protection. And I immediately had a meeting with the National Security Advisor in the Situation Room in the White House to ensure we were at the highest levels of force protection. Not only did I do that, I personally asked in an open committee hearing that Tedra Cobb can view the Secretary of Defense to make sure we were at the highest level of force protection, as well as General Milley, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This was while Tedra Cobb continued to tweet Nancy Pelosi and the New York Times talking points that were smearing our men and women in uniform. And when it comes to supporting our military funds and our intelligence funding, my opponent supports cutting defense spending. I've reinvested in military readiness to make sure that they have the resources to ensure the highest level of force protection.
I hate to interrupt you, but we need to give
Yes, we do.
Ms.
So let's
Cobb
go back.
time.
Let's go back here. Elise, you stopped attending House Intelligence Committee meetings in February. In fact, February 2nd, instead of attending a crucial House Intelligence Committee meeting, Elise Stefanik was on her way to Iowa to stump for the president. So let's be real here. The CIA says that this is a credible threat. Elise Stefanik has said nothing, and when this president says disparaging things about our troops and about fallen soldiers, you, Elise Stefanik, remain silent. You have not held this president accountable. You have not been respectful of those troops. Drive around the North Country and look at those homemade signs that say, I am not a sucker, I am not a loser, I am a veteran.
It leads to my next question. I have to ask you, why did you skip several House Intelligence Committee meetings
So
earlier this
Republicans
spring?
made the decision, and it was the correct decision, that we don't want to leak classified intelligence online. We also don't need to attend. February 2nd, there was no Intelligence Committee meeting, Tedra. It was a Sunday. You're misinformed. I know you would be a rubber stamp for Adam Schiff. We know how partisan Adam Schiff is. But here are the facts. A member of the military or intelligence agencies, they cannot conduct classified conversations or briefings online. Tedra Cobb would follow Adam Schiff's approach, which is to leak classified information, which would put our troops at risk. But let's take a step back here. On issues of national security, there are some very significant differences that will have a significant impact on our veterans and military families right here in this district. I led the effort to reinvest in our military readiness, rebuilding when it comes to our defense budget. I brought the president here when he signed the National Defense Authorization Act into law. My opponent's supporters protested that visit. I've advocated for increasing funding. She, when asked at the debate stage whether we should cut, she said we should cut. She also was fact-checked that she doesn't support missile defense spending. I'm proud of my record as the leading voice and most effective advocate for Fort Drum and veterans across the North Country.
Okay, so Elise, your job is to show up to those meetings. If you had an issue with those meetings, then you should have been in there and you should have fought to make sure that they were secure or done something. The
Tedra,
reality
they
is
were
this.
on Zoom.
The reality
you would
is
leak
this.
to China, Iran, and North Korea.
Workers
you
are
would leak.
frontline
You would leak
workers.
classified
All right,
information.
let's not interrupt each other.
Okay,
Get your thought out. We'll give you the 15 seconds for rebuttal.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Frontline workers are putting their lives at risk every day, and you did not show up for your job. If you were unhappy about it, then you should have figured something out. You're the Congresswoman. You are the Congresswoman. And to go back to the NDAA and the president coming to Fort Drum, that was the John McCain NDAA. It was to honor John McCain. And what I said in that debate
you said you want to cut defense.
Was that you did not honor John McCain. That is exactly what I said. And Lynn Kahn was also on the stage with us, and she said exactly the same thing.
Well, I want to take this opportunity. John McCain is a hero. I'm proud to be the only candidate.
And so this president has said horrible things about him.
Let's not interrupt. 15 seconds for rebuttal on that.
Don't interrupt.
You just interrupted me, at least.
Don't interrupt what I'm saying. John McCain is a hero. I am the only candidate on this stage that had the privilege of working with John McCain to reinvest in our nation's military. And when it comes to Tedra Cobb and protecting our national security, she would leak classified information online on Zoom.
I'm going to remind you, we have 1 hour, and the constituents in Northern New York really want to hear a lot of these issues. So let's move on to the next question.
And we will ask you to please not talk over each other. Great. The future of healthcare is a top concern for a lot of North Country families, especially with the Supreme Court about to hear a case aiming to cancel the Affordable Care Act. Ms. Cobb, what would you propose as a new member of the House? Medicare for all? How would the country pay for that?
I don't propose Medicare for all. I propose a Medicare public option. So, a Medicare public option is very simple. People who want to can buy into Medicare, and people who want to keep their insurance would be able to do so. And you've pointed out a crucial point. Elise Stefanik has taken over $300,000 from the pharmaceutical and from the insurance industries who want to end protections for people with pre-existing conditions, and she's voted to cut or end the Affordable Care Act 5 times. That vote, 5 times she's voted to end the Affordable Care Act. That would kick 64,000 people in this district off their health care. So in November 10th, if this passes, Elise Stefanik will have her way because she has voted 5 times to repeal the Affordable Care Act, to kick 64,000 people off their health care, and to strip away protections for people with pre-existing conditions. She supported this president's lawsuit, and she has no plan. She's been in Congress for 6 years. I just told you I support a Medicare public option, but Elise Stefanik has never brought forward her plan. What will happen when they strip away our health care?
Which brings us to Ms. Stefanik. What is the Republican plan, the alternative? Can you guarantee no one here in Northern New York would be kicked off their current health care plan if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
So first, I think it's important to recognize Obamacare has major issues. When Obamacare was implemented, this is one of the reasons why I decided to run for office. People saw their premiums skyrocket, deductibles increase, as well as cancellations of plans. We deserve more affordable, better access to health care that's patient-driven and particularly works in a rural community. Here are the principles that I support in a replacement package. Number one, you cover those with pre-existing conditions. Number two, you allow young people to stay on their parents' plan until the age of 26. You allow health care to be purchased across state lines to help lower costs. And you also allow small businesses to pool together to purchase into associated health care plans. You asked my opponent about Medicare for All. For 2 years, she ran in support of Medicare for All. It was on her website. She once again is running from her statements. And I think it's because, like so many issues she supports, she got advice from her DC consultants that that's not going to work in the North Country. North Country voters know that they don't support Medicare for All because it would cancel, Tedra Cobb would cancel private health insurance and take away Medicare from seniors who have paid into that program. She can't run from that record. It was on her own website for 2 years.
So the answer to your question, Elise just said she has no plan. She's given some principles, the principle of covering people with pre-existing conditions, but she's voted against it 5 times.
Well, you lead us into our next question, Brian.
Thank you so much.
We had viewers ask us questions, send them into us. We've gotten a lot of them. The first one is for you. Chris Costi wrote to us asking you, why should voters believe you when you say you will protect pre-existing conditions when your record has consistently shown that you have not in the past? How do you answer, Chris?
Well, I have voted to protect those with pre-existing conditions. I've also voted to expand access to health care. I've also have been the leader when it comes to rural health care, funding our community health centers. I am proud to have written and gotten signed into law the largest fix to Obamacare, and it was signed into law by President Obama, a bipartisan solution to help lower costs. I also helped lead lowering of taxes, elimination of taxes that were included in the ACA. But what's interesting here, Brian, is my opponent, who ran for 2 years on Medicare for All, which would be a $30 trillion plus tax increase on families across this district, she is running away from that. She's not acknowledging that for 2 years it was on her own website. She said it in multiple interviews, multiple candidate forums, and now she wants to wipe that away. What Medicare for All, which Tedra supports, would do is eliminate private health insurance that so many families in this district rely on, and it would take away Medicare from our seniors.
I'll give you 30 seconds to respond.
Thank you. So the New York State Hospital Association, it's the Hospital Association of New York State, it's called Haney's. They begged the Republicans not to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And what they said is the Affordable Care Act shored up our hospitals. So in this district, 65,000 people who were previously uninsured and who were not protected with pre-existing conditions. And I want you to know 41% of the people in this district who are not elderly have a pre-existing condition. My own daughter has degenerative disc disease. People have asthma or cancer. Elise Stefanik has voted 5 times to strip away protections for people with pre-existing conditions. And I will just say, the plan in 2017 that the Republicans put forward did not protect people with pre-existing conditions.
I'm going to add to the Hospital Association. I'm the only person on this stage that has support from the Hospital Association of New York. And it's because I've been a leader standing up for bipartisan fixes to improve quality and access to health care. And it's because of my close working relationship with all the hospitals in this district.
Okay, I want to clear something up. Medicare for All, did you change your mind to go to the public option?
In the last cycle, what I talked about, because there were many, there were many plans put forward. There was a Medicare public option, a Medicare for All, there was the ACA extension, and what I said is I've worked for 30 years. I've spent my life's work expanding access to health care, and we need portable and affordable health care. And that's really what I was trying to say. Here are the options. What I have said clearly in this cycle, and unfortunately Elise Stefanik has not given me credit for that, and that is that I have a plan. It is a Medicare public option. Americans like it because it allows competition. It allows you to keep what you have if you want and expand and buy Medicare if you want to. And again, Elise Stefanik has no plan.
But
No
Brian,
plan.
Medicare for
wrap
all
it. We need to have that
was
be the
on her
last
own
word.
website.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
we are going to take a break and a
Thank
timeout.
you.
We'll have much more of the NBC5 New York 21st Congressional District debate when we come back.
You're watching an NBC5 Commitment 2020 presentation. Now, questions continue for the candidates for New York's 21st Congressional District.
Welcome back, and we want to start now with a question for both of you. The president is telling his supporters, if Democrats are elected to office, they'll take away your guns, destroy the Second Amendment. Ms. Stefanik's campaign is running an ad saying her opponent's plans on grabbing people's guns. Ms. Cobb, is this actually true? What is your plan?
So the vast majority of Americans want to make sure that people who are responsible gun owners have their guns, and I believe that the North Country is a community where we respect responsible gun owners' rights while also the ability to protect our families. The vast majority of Americans agree that we should have universal background checks, that we should close gun show loopholes, and that we should pass meaningful legislation that keeps our families safe, like the Violence Against Women Act. But unfortunately, Elise Stefanik has voted against each of these things. I believe that we can protect responsible gun owners' rights while also protecting our families. I will support each of those pieces of legislation to protect our families. But unfortunately, Elise Stefanik has voted against each of them.
Let me ask you, do you really believe that if Democrats are elected to office that they're going to take away guns?
Yes, just look at Joe Biden, who supports an assault weapons plan, and look at my opponent, who said they should be banned. Those are her own words, caught on camera when asked what she thinks about an assault weapons ban. She said, quote, they should be banned, but then she went a step further and said, but I can't say that because I won't win. So she was willing to lie to voters. This is a clear difference in this race. I am proud to have the highest rating when it comes to my Second Amendment support of any member in the New York delegation. My opponent has earned an F, the lowest rating in the history of the North Country. She's earned it because her position is she supports an assault weapons ban, even though on this stage she's going to say yet again, like Medicare for all, defunding the police, her support for Nancy Pelosi, she is going to run from her very own statements. I'm proud of my record standing up for the Constitution and standing up for the constitutional rights of voters across the North Country.
I'll give you 30 seconds to respond to that.
Thank you.
Do
I don't support
you
an
don't
assault
support it.
rifle ban. I do listen to constituents. I've been a county legislator for 8 years. And one thing Elise Stefanik has failed to talk about is that I ran a second time unopposed. So I ran the first time, second time unopposed. And what that means is that I listened to my constituents, I worked in my community, and I received the respect of the Republicans and Democrats and my community not to have an opposition. Now, I believe that we should respect responsible gun owners' rights, but I also believe that we should pass meaningful legislation banning.
She said it herself. Banning. She said it herself. Banning assault weapons.
No,
What
I
I've
didn't
done.
say that.
She did not
banning.
get
She
to
said
that point.
banning.
Gun show loopholes, and you know what, Elise, I'm not a career politician, and I will never lie about you or twist the truth about you.
You said banning. She said banning.
I said the word banning, Elise.
Because that's
This
what
is-
she
this is
supports, a
childish.
gun ban. This is
No.
what voters know. She supports a gun ban. She can't even help it. She's been on record multiple times and on this very stage. And when
Elise,
it comes
I have
to
been very
addressing,
clear
when it
about
comes
what
to
I think.
addressing
Let's not-
increasing
All right,
mental
we're
health
talking
funding.
over each
Go ahead and
other
wrap
again.
your thought.
Sure. When it comes to increasing mental health funding, when it comes to fix NICS to make sure information is shared in the background check, I've passed both of those. My opponent listened to her. Banning, it came out of her mouth. She supports an assault weapons ban.
So let's be clear. You voted against the Violence Against Women Act. You voted against closing gun show loopholes. Those are all things that Americans believe will keep people safe, and you voted against every one of them. I just
Brian,
want the record to be
we
clear.
need to- we need to-
just
I'll
want to
I'll
be
give
the
you-
record clear here.
Okay, I'll give
I'm
you
gonna
15
respond.
seconds and that's it.
I
we'll
wrote
move
the
on.
clean reauthorization of the Violence Against Women's Act, and the reason why it expired is because Nancy Pelosi added anti-Second Amendment provisions. But you need to just listen to what my opponent said. She said banning when it comes to assault weapons, when it comes to guns. She knew as soon as the word banning came out of her mouth that it was going to be a problem. I'm proud of my record, not only supporting Second Amendment rights, but as I said, investing in mental health.
We are moving.
Okay.
We
Okay.
are
Let's
moving
move
on
on.
now to the next question. Do you believe that climate change is man-made, and how much are you willing to ask voters to do in this district to change their behavior to address the threat? Should they change the way that they heat their homes? Should they change the cars they drive? How far are you willing to go? What's off the table?
So climate change is a significant issue, and I believe that we need to put forth bipartisan solutions. I'm proud to have one of the highest records of any Republican in the entire United States Congress when it comes to standing up for our environment and our conservation. I've been an advocate for renewable energy resources like wind and solar, which is important in the district, but also for expanding that into biomass, hydropower, and nuclear energy resources. What I don't want to see is a tax. My opponent supported a carbon tax, which would increase the cost of energy for families who are really working to balance their budgets on a weekly and monthly basis. I don't support a Green New Deal. I'd be interested in my opponent's position on that. She tends to support it. She's going to change her position again, but I put forth those bipartisan solutions and ideas to protect our environment while also protecting our economy.
Before we let
That's
Ms.
not the
Cobb answer,
question.
I want you to answer this question.
Sure.
Is climate change man-made?
Yes, man has a part of it, yes.
Okay.
Ms. Cobb.
Thank you. So your question was, what can we ask people to do? The first thing is that people who are running for office, I believe, should not take corporate money, because Elise Stefanik has taken $205,000 from the fossil fuel industry and then she's voted to dump toxic waste into our waters. She voted against the Clean Power Plan and to gut the EPA. So what we have now is the Adirondacks in the North Country. We are paying for those votes. So what I believe is that we should invest in green energy and clean energy. And I believe that people should live their values. I do live my values. I drive a Volt. It's a beautiful thing. I've got solar on my house. I've had it since 1993. So when I have a young person in particular ask me, do you believe that we should do something to protect our children's future? When grandparents ask me, will you protect my grandchildren's future? My answer to that is yes, I will. We can invest in green jobs. We can invest in...
I will ask you the same thing. Do you believe that climate change is man-made?
I believe in science. I believe in science-based decision making. And it is unfortunate this president does not believe in science, and Elise Stefanik is his campaign co-chair, and he has single-handedly gutted the EPA.
Along those lines, another viewer question for both of you this time. Jack Sullivan from Malone wants to know, what energy sources do you advocate for Northern New York, and how well informed are you in regards to their advantages and disadvantages? Ms. Cobb?
Sure. So the North Country has always been a leader in green energy. Hydro, we have wind, we have solar. So we have a lot, and farms are using methane digesters. A farm in my community has a fantastic methane digester. So we have always been a leader. The thing that's really important in the North Country is not allowing New York State to overrule what local municipalities and local governments want to do. And sometimes that happens with wind. And I'm really familiar with that in my own community and in the North Country. So I think it's important that we further those. I could talk about energy for a long time.
Jack Sullivan has the same question for you, and we are going to 30 seconds for our answers now.
Okay. Sure. So absolutely wind. I've worked to help wind development projects right here in Franklin and Clinton County. Biomass is another growth opportunity. I actually authored language in the National Defense Bill to protect our biomass facility. Growth opportunities are in hydropower. I've supported the solar tax credit. But when it comes to conservation and protecting the environment, I've been able to deliver real results, like permanently funding the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which goes to important projects in the North Country, as well as increase funding for the Lake Champlain Basin Fund. I did that working across the aisle and across the lake with Peter Welch. These are really significant environmental and conservation wins that have a real impact on families in our district.
Okay, I'm going to remind both of you as we go forward, we're going to cut it down to 30-second answers and even quicker rebuttals here. Let's move on to the next question. There's a lot of division in Washington right now. How will you work with the other party to help make our country a better place over the next 2 years? Ms. Stefanik, could you really work with a potential Joe Biden White House?
Absolutely. I'm proud to be in the top 5% most bipartisan members of Congress. I just gave an example of working with Peter Welch across the lake and across the aisle on the Lake Champlain Basin program, increasing funds. When I was first elected, President Obama was in his second term in office, and I worked with him to deliver really important results, the largest fix to Obamacare that was signed into law as part of an appropriations package. And we also successfully expanded Pell Grant access to year-round legislation I introduced that was also a part of a funding package. These are real wins, and they're examples of delivering bipartisanship.
Ms. Cobb, you would be new to Washington, D.C. Would you be able to work with President Trump if he wins a second term in office, or would you block him?
No, I would work with President Trump. The point here is that I have a history as a county legislator working in this community with working with people in my community who are Democrats and Republicans. I started my public service as a volunteer firefighter. Never once did we stop to consider whether the family in a burning house was a Democrat or Republican. We just put the fire out. In the county legislature, we passed a tough ethics law. We lowered the cost of prescription drugs. We helped soldiers and their families get health care. These are the kinds of things that I would bring to Washington. I want to point out that Elise Stefanik has passed 2 pieces of legislation while she has had 6 years in Congress. She has passed 2 pieces of legislation She's named a post office and she's minted a coin. Those are her signature pieces of legislation.
I'll give you 15 seconds to
Absolutely. So Tedra Cobb is woefully misinformed. I've passed multiple bills as part of the National Defense Authorization Act. I've passed multiple bills that have been part of the appropriations package. I talked about expanding Pell Grant access. I talked about the largest fix to Obamacare. She doesn't understand, similar to her not understanding court packing like she answered earlier this week, she doesn't understand that passing a bill, you can do it through appropriations or you can do it on the House floor. The reality is I've delivered bipartisan results and kept my promises to this district.
Let's move on to the next question.
Okay, the next question. Governor Cuomo signed a bail reform into law. It started January 1st. It eliminates bail for many crimes, including some felonies in New York. It is quite controversial. Presidential candidate Joe Biden has bail reform in his plan to improve social justice. Do you support the state law, and would you support bail reform on a national level? Ms. Cobb, we begin with you.
I do support bail reform on a national level. I did not support New York State's bail reform. It was passed too quickly. They made many mistakes, including not protecting people from violent offenders and not giving justices enough discretion. So I did not support New York State, but on principle, I think we need bail reform and social justice.
Ms. Stefanik.
My opponent had bail reform on her website before she frantically deleted it. Yes,
I just said I support bail reform.
Why'd you delete it from your website? Because you know that Governor Cuomo's bail reform released violent criminals onto our streets. You deleted it from your website like you deleted Medicare for All. I don't support Governor Cuomo's bail reform like my opponent does. I think it's made our communities less safe, and it's been a real challenge for law enforcement. As I listen to law enforcement officers across this district, they've been very critical, not only of the process and that was rushed, but how it doesn't help the security and safety of our communities.
So I just agreed with Elise Stefanik on New York State's bail reform law. Note, please, everyone who's watching, I just agreed with you, and yet you cannot, for one moment. You've asked, how do you work with other people? This is an example of the inability to either work together or acknowledge. Instead, you choose to lie. And the people in this district deserve something else. I just said, I was very clear. I do support bail reform. I did not support New York State's bail reform. I said that very clearly, Elise. You can twist it however you want.
So 10
you
seconds
can twist it however you want.
Here are the facts. You had bail reform on your website.
Does it matter?
You deleted it.
I said I agree with bail reform,
why did you delete
but not
it?
New York State.
You deleted it because you delete your positions on your website. Medicare for All,
people have
bail
websites.
Reform.
All right.
And you delete your position over
and
over again. You can't run from your record.
We've got more topics to get to.
Thank you.
Let's move to the Supreme Court. It was mentioned a minute ago. Judge Amy Coney Barrett is just 2 votes away from being confirmed. Just days before the election. It would cement a 6-3 conservative majority on the court. Ms. Cobb, if elected, would you support an effort to pack the court, adding 4 justices to give the court a liberal majority again?
So the honest answer to that is maybe. The honest answer is maybe. I don't want to do that. It is legal and it is constitutional. But I don't want to do that. Unfortunately, right now in Washington, Mitch McConnell, this administration, and enablers like Elise Stefanik have pushed through this nomination. And instead of focusing on the needs of the people in this country in a global pandemic. So no, I don't want to do that, but really the answer is maybe.
North Country voters deserve an honest answer.
That is the honest answer.
That is a vote that comes up in Congress, and voters deserve to know if you're for or against court packing. I oppose court packing. My opponent just 2 days ago did not know that court packing would be a vote in Congress. You deserve an answer between now and Election Day, because that will have a significant impact. And when it comes to the constitutional duty to fill and nominate an individual to the Supreme Court, I support the Constitution, I support the President's right to put forth a name, and I support the Senate's position to advise and consent. My opponent should answer that question for North Country voters. I would vote no on efforts to pack the court.
And you would
vote? I answered the question. 70% of the American people believe that the new president and the new Senate should have been able to do this. Unfortunately, Mitch McConnell and the Republicans held up a Supreme Court justice nomination, and now they're pushing one through. And instead of doing the
So
work
this
of the
question
American
was on
people.
court packing. She still hasn't answered it.
I
This
just
question was
answered
on
the
court
She said
packing.
maybe. Let me
said
give
maybe.
you.
I said I don't want to, but unfortunately,
So you will.
right.
So you will if they fill
You
the
said
seat.
we're clear on this. You said maybe.
I said
have,
maybe.
I have a yes or no question for you.
Sure.
Okay. You are a pro-life Republican. Would you welcome a decision from this new court with a 6-3 majority conservative of overturning Roe v. Wade?
Roe v. Wade is settled law. Multiple conservative justices have testified towards that. I am pro-life on legislative record. I believe in exceptions for life of the mother, rape, and incest. But my opponent, going back to the court packing question, she refuses to answer that. That is a question that voters deserve to know the answer to.
Well, she said maybe,
said
and,
maybe.
and she's clear
Maybe
on
it's
that.
not an answer.
It is
Maybe
an
it's not an
answer.
answer.
Well, that's her
There's
answer
no,
right
when
now.
When you vote in Congress,
and you know what?
maybe
when
it's
you
not
are
an
a
answer.
legislator, no matter if you're in local government
Maybe it's
or
not an
Congress,
answer. It's yes
you
or
look
no.
at the evidence. And I just said I don't want to do that, but unfortunately,
But you will.
Mitch McConnell
You will.
has pushed
if
it
they
forward.
fill the seat, you will. You
I
said
will
you don't
look
want
at
to.
All right.
every
Next
piece of
question.
evidence.
I
I'll
want
look
an
at
answer.
every piece of evidence.
Before we move on, yes or no, would you welcome the overturning of Roe v. Wade?
I'm pro-life, and I've voted pro-life since I've been in Congress. Roe v. Wade is settled law, as multiple justices have testified when they were nominated. I will maintain my pro-life, and I'm personally pro-life with those 3 exceptions. My opponent supports abortion in the 3rd trimester, and the law that was passed in New York State, abortion after birth. That is far, far to the left. That's
Abortion
not
after
where.
birth?
Absolutely. In New York State, Democratic legislators were criticized for that.
So is that a yes or a no? That's a
not
yes?
a yes or no.
You would welcome it?
You're on court packing. You're
No,
going to let her
I'm
get
not
away
talking
with a
about court
maybe.
I'm Roe v. Wade.
My answer is I am pro-life. I have a pro-life voting record, and these justices should look at each and every case through the lens of the Constitution and the lens of the laws that are written by Congress and the United States Senate. I'm pro-life. I will continue to vote pro-life.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. And that would be,
Ms. Stefanik, how would Washington and its priorities change if there were term limits on members of Congress?
I support term limits. I believe in term limits. I think it is important that we have new generations, new voices. I think that's good for the American people. I think that accountability is important. I also think we shouldn't have gerrymandering. You see a very aging Democratic leadership, much older than Republican leadership, because they represent gerrymandered district. This is actually the least gerrymandered district in the entirety of New York State, if you look at how the boundaries are drawn. So I support term limits, and I support getting rid of gerrymandering.
Ms. Cobb, go ahead real quickly.
I actually support term limits as well. And when I ran for the legislature, I supported term limits. And unfortunately, that was one thing I could not get through. It's very hard to do that. So I agree with Elise Stefanik on term limits. And I also think that we need to get money out of politics. So in Congress, that will be a priority because and you haven't asked about money, and I hope that we will ask about money in politics.
Well, we're running out of
We're
time
out of
here, so
time.
we're going to move on to the lightning round here to help get us through this. We're asking for very short, succinct 10-second answers to these. So Stephanie, go ahead.
Okay, let's move on to this question and keep your answers to 10 seconds. We start with this. So what's one nice thing you have to say about your opponent? Ms. Cobb?
I think that Elise Stefanik is driven. I think that she is focused and driven.
I think Tedra Cobb is a very dedicated mom. She speaks with passion when it comes to her children, and that's something that we can all admire.
Ms. Stefanik, what is your favorite site to visit in northern New York?
My favorite site to visit is Fort Ticonderoga. I loved going there as a kid, and I've loved helping deliver results and funding for Fort Ticonderoga. It's a special part of our history.
Ms. Cobb?
I actually love taking walks down my road. I know that sounds small, but I live on a back road, and this morning I started with a 4-mile walk with my dog.
Ms. Stefanik, what is your favorite food that is made, grown, or unique to northern New York?
I love cider donuts. I love Saratoga apple cider donuts. That's where my husband and I go over the weekends. I have tried cider donuts all around the district, whether it's Caneb's, whether it's Rolf's. I love cider donuts.
So I married an organic farmer over 30 years ago. And so for me, anything that comes out in the summer, tomatoes are my favorite. Tomatoes and cucumbers with some feta, I will eat that every day.
Next one, would you have the courage to try a run down the bobsled, luge, or skeleton track in Lake Placid?
I have done that. I think that's the one where you're laying like this and you get to go down.
Right.
Yeah, I did that once.
Okay, so you've done it.
I've done it too. I've done it too. My dad, when my brother and I were kids, we did halfway on the bobsled. And I think it's great, and I think it's an important part of tourism.
Ms. Stefanik, you appear in one of your campaign TV ads making pizza. We want to know what your favorite topping is.
I like pepperoni, I like jalapenos, and I like a lot of tomato sauce.
Ms. Cobb?
I like cheese, mushrooms, olives, pretty much any vegetable, including tomatoes.
All right, a lot of information there shared in the last 2 minutes. All right, it's time for closing statements, and we begin with Elise Stefanik.
Thank you so much to NBC5. Thank you to my opponent, Tedra Cobb. On November 3rd, there is a clear choice on the ballot. I'm proud to be running on my bipartisan record of results. I'm in the top 5% most bipartisan members of Congress. I've been a tireless advocate for our North Country veterans, small businesses, manufacturers, and farms. This is a choice. I want to focus on lowering health care costs and improving quality and access. My opponent ran for 2 years on Medicare for All, which would cancel private health insurance, and it would take away Medicare Advantage for seniors. I'm proud to be endorsed by our law enforcement organizations. I will always support our law enforcement families. My opponent has voted to defund a deputy sheriff's position and has 0 law enforcement endorsements. I'm proud to be a friend of the New York Farm Bureau because of my hard work on behalf of our local farmers, and I'm proud to have the support of small business organizations as well as our manufacturers. I will work tirelessly for you, and I humbly ask for your vote on November 3rd.
Ms. Cobb, 1 minute.
Thank you so much again, NBC5 and Congresswoman Stefanik. It is such an honor to have been a candidate in this race. I want you to know that there's a saying, it's called the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. I have been working in Northern New York for over 30 years, expanding access to health care, helping families put food on the table, fighting for fair funding for our schools. And I will continue to bring that passion every day. So I have been with Northern New Yorkers fighting alongside you. I will bring that to Washington now and in the future. So the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. I've been with you for the past 30 years. I'm here with you tonight. I will be with you in Washington fighting for you and your families, and I would be so honored to have your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Well, thank you both for being here tonight. That is all the time we have for this debate. Thanks again to our host here tonight, the Strand Theater in downtown Plattsburgh.
And if you missed anything, you can absolutely watch the full debate on mynbc5.com or on our mobile app. Thank you so much for watching tonight.
For all of us at NBC5 News, have a good night, everyone.